How you doing? It's your boy BrogiNaric, back again with another review. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, which recently came out. I'm going to be giving my non-spoiler review, but there will be spoilers later on in the video. If you want spoilers, you can jump to the timestamp in the description. And before we get into it, don't forget to like this video, share, subscribe to the channel. Still growing, we use your help, so please do that. Now, Last Night in Soho is directed by Edgar Wright, who is one of my favorite directors currently and of all time. He is awesome. I love his films. Looking at his filmography, I have seen all of his films, besides his little shorts that he's done. And I love all of his movies. Like, each one either gets better or has like the same amount of consistency. He has a certain unique style, and recently his style has sort of shifted a little bit, or at least the tone of his movies have shifted. And once I heard that after he did the movie Baby Driver, some time has passed. He usually spaces out time between his movies. His next project was Last Night in Soho, and Edgar Wright's one of those directors where I don't know anything about it. It's usually something original, and I'm there. Like, I'll do my best to go see it in theaters to support, and that was no different with this movie. This was my second most anticipated movie of 2021, and after seeing Last Night in Soho, I have to say I was not disappointed. The movie is really solid. Like, as I was discussing with my brother, Edgar Wright don't miss. The man just don't miss. His movies are fucking awesome, and this is another really solid movie in his filmography. So the basic story is, if you've seen the trailer, it's about this girl named Eloise, who's this young woman who she's going to London. She's obsessed with like the 60s and 60s music and 60s fashion. She's like a fashion designer, and I don't know if I should say this, but but basically she's new in town. She ends up moving into this apartment in Soho. Soho's this area in London. I always, when I hear Soho, I would think it's New York, but it's actually in London. And she moves into this room, and out of nowhere, she starts giving these flashbacks and visions of this young woman back in the 60s, and she's kind of like reenacting living her life, and she starts to get confused. Then she finds out about this woman's story, and she gets involved with this guy, and bad things happen. She ends up dead. So now she's trying to solve this woman's murder, because she believes that the murderer is still alive, and this old guy that she runs into, and it's still in the Soho neighborhood. And the movie, is about her trying to avenge this woman, and that's the main synopsis of it. And it gets crazier than that, and it's really good. Like, I didn't know where this was going. Sometimes with Edgar Wright's movies, they could be a lot of twists and turns. Like, if you've seen, well, not twists and turns, but a lot of add-ons, like things just get bigger and bigger. And like, if you watch like Scott Pilgrim, or even Hot Fuzz, where like shit just keeps escalating. He doesn't quite do that here, but there is like a I don't know necessarily a twist. There's a certain reveal that happens and that amplifies the story, and I thought it was really good. And the cast is solid as well. So we'll talk about the characters. The main character is Eloise, or Ellie, played by Thomasine McKenzie. I think this is my first time seeing her. She's good. She's really good in the role. She's got a cute face. She plays the country girl who's moving to the big city and not quite knowing how to fit in very well. And when they get to like the horror moments and the moments where she has to react to like the crazy shit she's seeing, she does a really good job with that. There's also, I'll jump to, what's his name, John, played by Michael Agjaho, I'm gonna say. He's one of the other students at the fashion school, young black actor. He was in the movie Attack the Block. He was, if you ever seen the movie Attack the Block, remember it's like the little black kid and the little white kid that were like really young and they wanted to get involved with the teens. He's the little black kid. And he's in this, he plays John, who is like, I don't want to call him, he's thirsty, but he's not like super, he doesn't go overboard, but he is thirsty. And he's got a crush on Eloise, and he's trying to help her out. But he's also like actually like a good help and a good friend, which she needs, because she's, they kind of got like that little sort of Mean Girls-ish thing going on, but it doesn't go too overboard with it, but that is in the story. An actor who I didn't realize was in this movie, even though I've seen this trailer a bunch of times. Friggin' Terrence Stamp is in this movie, and he plays this old man who might be the suspected killer of the young lady. He's awesome. Terrence Stamp is awesome. And he does great in his role. He thankfully he was in this movie more than I thought he was going to be. Once I realized it was Terrence Stamp. Um, Anya Taylor Joy plays Sandy, who is the young lady back in the '60s who wants to be this superstar. I say Anya Taylor Joy. I haven't seen much of her, but I know she's popping right now. She's really good. I get why she's so popular right now. She's really good in this role, playing this young woman who wants to be a star, but then she kind of gets caught up with the wrong crowd and ends up seeing like the senior side of things. And she has to, do some things she didn't think she was going to do, and but she's also got moments where she shows off her talent, like dancing and singing. And Anna Taylor Joy does a great job in those roles. She looks great in her outfit and stuff like that. And there's moments where where they, oh, she's so hot and she's, that's looks is subjective. I'm not like super into her like that, but she, like I said, she wears the outfits well. She looks good. Another character is Jack, played by Matt Smith, who is the guy who becomes essentially her boyfriend slash manager, who kind of forces her into this certain lifestyle that she wasn't planning on. And he's good. Like I said, I'm familiar with him. I haven't seen him in many things. He has a unique look. He's really good in this. There's moments where he's kind of cool, calm, collected, and suave, and then there's other moments where he's just a fucking asshole and just like the slimiest guy ever. He plays both roles very well, and duality is really good. And another character, I don't even know if I should mention it. I'm not even going to mention him. There's another character in here who's this old lady. She's really good. Deanna Rigg, who plays Miss Collins, and she played Emma Peel back in the original Avengers TV show in the '60s, and she was in some James Bond movies. She's been around a long time, and apparently this was going to be like her last performance. She's also been on Game of Thrones, so yeah, she's a very popular actress, and she's really good in this too. Especially once I realized who she was. And but yeah, the movie really focuses on women who've been abused, women who are trying to deal with that and trying to be taken seriously, but then like the seedy underbelly of like sex work and all that. Like I didn't know the movie was going to get into all this, but that's what it goes into that direction. Women who've been abused or who wants to report abuse, and sometimes they're not taken seriously, like stuff like that. It focuses a little bit on mental illness because our main character Eloise has a history of mental illness in her family, which I don't necessarily want to spoil. But then she's also got some stuff going on with her mental health as well, which plays into how she sees all these different visions and stuff. But it gets into the horror. The horror is done well, but I would call this more of like a psychological thriller slash murder mystery with slight horror elements. Nothing too scary, nothing necessarily too gory, but when it kicks in, because it takes its time to, like I said, it feels like Mean Girls at first, but then once it clicks into like the fantasy time travel back to the '60s stuff, then that's like more of a drama. Then it drips more into the horror because she every time she goes to sleep in this room, she now is in this woman's dreams or this woman's visions of this woman's life, and that's kind of starts affecting her. Where then it starts happening to her when she's not asleep, and it's making her look crazy, and everyone around her is like, "Yo, what the fuck is wrong with her?" And it could like potentially fuck up her, her career at this fashion school. But yeah, one of the other positives is the soundtrack, which one of the things I love about Edgar Wright, him and Tarantino, they usually have dope ass soundtracks for their films, and this is no different. This is a lot of '60s pop rock music, which I love that type of music, and a lot of the songs were really fucking dope. The visuals of them in the clubs and in the basically the clubs. There's a lot of scenes of them in like these cool clubs in the '60s in England, and it looks fun as hell. And also pretty depressing. And then there's like even clubs and sort of strip clubs, risque type shit going on. But it's done very well. A couple dance sequences and stuff. It's all done very well. There's a lot of CG, of course, because it's modern movie, and there's like these ghosts. They're not necessarily creepy, but they get the point across. But they're all just these ghosts with like blurred out faces, and some of them have like blood on them and stuff like that. Stuff towards the end gets very CGI heavy, but it becomes like this weird sort of dreamscape. It looks cool though. Like I said, once it happens and it's kind of drifting in and out of reality and the weird fantasy, it looks cool. Like it really does look cool, and I appreciate all of it. Like it's a well crafted movie. Certain things, are mentioned, and then by the end, they mean more. I was about to ding it on one thing, but then when I thought about it, I remember there was a line that someone said, and I'm like, oh, that's the reason why they wanted them to do that, because that would expose, what had happened. Like I said, there's another couple of reveals towards the end that shifts what the narrative you think it is. Some of it you might see coming, some of it you might get drawn into, and I did get drawn into it, but when it was changed, I was like, oh, I like that. I like how he did that. But yeah, like I said, Edgar Wright, he don't miss, and this is another solid movie in his filmography. I would highly recommend checking it out. It's different. It's closer to Baby Driver than like say the Cornetto trilogy, because it's more serious and less humor. I think this is like the least humor in any of his movies, if I'm not mistaken. There's jokes, but it's not that that snappiness like with him and Simon Pegg and Nick Frost stuff, or the like I said, like the Scott Pilgrim stuff, or even like Baby Driver. There's a couple more jokes there as well, but this one is very more straightforward, and I didn't hate that. It's like he's doing something different, but it's still solid. We do get a Nick Frost cameo, which I thought was fun as well, but it's pretty much all the, like I said, negatives. I really can't think of too many negatives right now because I really enjoyed everything I like. Uh, Maybe some people might have a problem with the pacing. Like I said, I thought the pacing was good because I liked the characters and what was happening was fun. And I think the pacing was long enough to get to know the character. Then it would switch to, all right, let's go back in time. Then it would switch to, okay, now everything in time is bad. Like I thought it was structured very well. I wouldn't ding it on pacing, but some people might. It is a bit of a slow burn, I guess. Yeah, it is a bit of a slow burn. I would say, it is a bit of a slow burn in the beginning, but you'll get once, like I said, once it kicks into that '60s shit, it goes rolling on that. Some people might not like the nostalgia stuff. It's kind of like Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but not as bad because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was very indulgent on the '60s. This is too, but I think it's handled a lot better than the way Tarantino did it. That's my opinion. But with that being said, if I were to give Last Night in Soho a grade, I would give it a B plus or 8.5 out of 10. Really good movie. I was struggling between either like a B plus or an A minus, and I settled on B plus because I didn't want it to be like, well, I just saw it and I'm raving about it, so I'll pare it down a little bit. So yeah, B plus, 8.5 out of 10. Really, really good movie. Highly recommended. Didn't disappoint as my second most anticipated movie of the year. And I'm displeased. I'm displeased. It's really good. Go check it out. It's in theaters, or check it out when it's finally on digital download or whatever the hell. But yeah, that's all I got to say for non-spoilers. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the spoilers. All right, so let's get into spoilers here. I don't think I'm gonna talk about everything, but let's get some of the bigger stuff. So, the movie right off acknowledges that Ellie has like superpowers where she can just see dead people. Her mom died. As we find out, her mom committed suicide. She had like some mental health issues, and Ellie's been living with her grandmother, and her grandmother is the reason why she loves the '60s so much, because her grandmother is kind of imbued, giving her a lot of that stuff, and she's just eating it all up. I can relate to that because I have older parents too, and my dad loved the '60s and '50s and '70s, and that definitely had an influence on me growing up. So she can see dead people. So they already kind of give you a reason for why she can kind of see some of these visions. They don't necessarily explain, how she's able to do that or how she's able to see visions of the past. You could knock it. I just realized that you could knock the movie for that, but then we wouldn't have a movie, so whatever. The stuff with her early on at school where she's like, yeah, London, I can't wait because she's from the country, and then when she gets there, she realizes it's kind of hard for her to interact with people. I guess she didn't interact with people at her school. Maybe she was homeschooled. I don't know, but she damn sure didn't know how to interact with these young girls, these newer people at the school. And then the visions start happening, and they were beautiful. All that stuff shot in the 60s looked amazing. That first moment when what's her name, Sandy, is going into that club and she meets Jack and they dance. Like, I had like Pulp Fiction thought. Like, as soon as they started dancing, I was like, oh, this is Pulp Fiction, and I loved it. And the whole, Jack being this suave guy and her wanting to do whatever it takes to be famous. Like, you kind of know where the story is going. And he's willing to help. And, he gives her a job at this sort of, not a strip club. It's a bit more like a burlesque show, but it's not really, from what we saw, there wasn't much stripping going on, but you knew that was going to be going down. And she's dressed up like a fucking toy clown girl or toy clown ballerina, some weird shit. I don't know. And she's getting frustrated. And then, of course, once we realize, like, oh, well, she's not just doing these sort of peep showish type things, but she's also a prostitute now. Jack is not just her manager, but her fucking pimp. And having her sleep with these random rich guys. And it was interesting when you see, like, Ellie's, like, she's, she's loving all the 60s stuff. She starts to change her hair, and she's, making the design to look like Ellie. But then once she realizes, like, oh, wait, this is not as glamorous as I thought. There's this, dark underbelly. Like, oh, she's a prostitute. Oh, shit. Like, maybe I shouldn't idolize this woman as much. But then she's also kind of like, fuck, I want to help this woman. But, I can't because it's the 60s or whatever. And, you see that moment with her at the clubs. That moment she's, like, tripping. And, like, there's like, the circles around people and the colors are changing. Like, all of that shit looked really good. And it was almost effective. Even I was kind of like, whoa, okay, this is actually pretty effective. I know I'm not drunk right now, but I kind of feel it the way the screen is going. Shit goes left. She's being abused. She's sleeping with these guys. The reveal when Ellie, Ellie's trying to save her, or at least she thinks she's saving her. But then when she actually finds out that, like, no, Sandy actually did start sleeping with these guys, you can tell she's kind of heartbroken about that. The stuff with John, like I said, John, he's thirsty, but he wasn't like super, I wouldn't call him a simp, because he was trying to help this girl, because he could see that this girl was in trouble, but he also, was trying to get at her, but he wasn't like super stalky or anything, stalkery or anything like that, which I appreciated. They didn't go overboard with him being attracted to her. And I love the moment where they go to the Halloween party and they're dancing and all of that, getting drunk, and then, like, she starts freaking out and she's seeing all these ghosts of the different Johns, the different dudes that Sandy had been sleeping with, popping up, and they're kind of chasing her and shit. And I guess that was good stuff. And that's the moment with her. I think that leads to her going to the cops. But anyway, she's working at the bar to pay for the rent, and she keeps running into Terrence Stamp, who's like looking at her, and he's like attracted. He might be attracted to her, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, he used to be a ladies' man back in the day." And, he's Terrence Stamp, so he already looks evil as fuck. Even though he's not necessarily evil, he's just like a fucking kind of cocky old man. He's Terrence Stamp. So, you're led to believe, like, oh shit, is that Jack? And they're like, oh yeah, da-da-da, he knows all the girls in Soho, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, fuck, that guy's evil. He probably killed Sandy. But then we find out that, you see one of Ellie's visions when her and John are going back to her place and starting to make out. She's looking up and she can see, like, a bed on the ceiling, and it's Jack with a knife trying to stab Sandy. He does stab her. So now she's just like, oh shit, I need to report this to somebody. And the police are like, you got visions of the past. Some girl died, and you think it's some guy still around. Like they're not really buying it, or at least they do want. Well, the lady kind of wants to believe it, or is like willing to listen to her. The other cop is like, this chick is crazy, but Ellie's still trying to find some information. And I love the bit where she's like freaking out at the library and she's seeing the ghosts, but it's actually the people there, and she almost stabs the mean girl, and like John stops her. Like that shit was cool. I like that. So the old man, Terrence Stamp, is there at the bar, and she's recording him, and she's like, "Oh, this guy's guilty," and they're getting into it. She's like, "Oh, you knew Dusty," and he's like, "Yeah, I knew Dusty. Like, you look familiar, da da da." And he's like, "Yeah, I've been around. I knew of all these women. Things are crazy." And she's like, "Well, you might have killed Dusty." And he's like, "The only person who knows, not Dusty. I keep saying Dusty. What was her name? Sandy. I keep saying Dusty. Her name was Sandy. I keep saying Dusty." He was like, "The only person who knows what happened to Sandy is Alex, because Sandy's name is Alexandria. Alexandria." And she's like, "Alex is the only person who knows what happened to Sandy, and Alex is still out there." And I'm just like, who the fuck is Alex? And I'm just like, so wait, is Jack? I'm sitting there like, is Jack's real name actually Alex and something like that? I'm thinking. And then they get into an argument, and he's starting to leave. And they do establish early on. This is another thing with Edgar Wright. He does establish early on about the cabs, and if you're standing in the road, someone's gonna hit your ass. And sadly, that's what happens to Terrence Stamp when he's getting into an argument with Ellie, and he kind of stops and looks back at her to tell her, kind of tell her like, fuck off, like you're gonna turn me into the police, like what are you talking about? And as soon as he kind of turns around and he kind of stands there just a little bit, and bam, he gets hit by a cab, and he's in the middle of the street, and I'm like, well, I guess that's the end of him. And everyone's freaking out. They're like, oh shit, what happened? And then we find out that the guy that we thought was the suspect, or we were led to believe was Jack, is actually named Leslie. And he's actually the cop that she had the vision of meeting Sandy in the club. And it turns out that the reason he knows the area well and he knows the women because he worked for the vice department at the police department, the vice squad at the police department. Vice, they do drugs and prostitution stuff. So that's why he knew the area. That's why he was like also known as the ladies' man. He had to get to know girls and stuff like that. And so that was a cool reveal that like, no, actually he was the cop, and that's how he knew there. He just happened to be a fucking douche. And earlier when Ellie was looking up the different, trying to find the death of Sandy in the newspaper, she kept coming across all these different murders, these different guys within Soho, with these disappearance. No one ever found the bodies. These 100 guys that disappeared, and so it's like, who's Alex? And I'm just like, I guess Alexandria, and like the only other person that could be a suspect that's old is Miss Collins. So I'm like, oh shit, is Miss Collins actually Sandy? And then we find out when she goes back, she meets John, and she's like, look, I gotta get the fuck out of London. I gotta get out of Soho. This place is not good for my mental health. And John's like, well, I can drive you. You don't have to waste money on the train. I got a car. So she's like, all right, fuck it, but I gotta go talk to Miss Collins because I had to pay her like 2 months rent in advance in order to move in, and I could really use that money since I'm about to get the fuck out of here. So she goes to see Miss Collins, and Miss Collins is kind of pissed at her because she's like happy to see her, but then she's also low-key pissed at her because she's like, let's go in the room and let's have some tea. And she's like, okay. So she gives her the tea, and she's listening to her music. She's like, yeah, you listening to all that 60s music made me bring out my collection. I'm starting to smoke again because there was a scene earlier where John was there and she was freaking out. She doesn't like guys being at the house like past 8 p.m. or something like that. So she was a little on edge. So she's like, yeah, you got me smoking again, but it's cool. I was gonna start smoking eventually. But you know, you had the police over at my crib. You know, the lady officer came in here asking questions. You know, that's not cool. I don't like people coming around here asking questions. And also, you asked me about there being a murder in the room, and she's like, you know, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, there was a murder in the room of this girl. Well, I guess like her real self died, and you know, she transformed into something else. And she basically reveals that yes, she is Sandy. And you see that the letter for her is Miss Alexandra Collins. So Sandy and Anya Taylor-Joy's character is the old lady. That's the landlady of the building, and she basically tells. And like Ellie's like freaking out. She's like, wait a second, I thought you got killed by Jack. And she's like, actually no, Jack tried to kill me, and I had enough of his shit, and I took the knife and killed his ass. And then she's like, she said he made me, you know, sleep with 100 guys, so I stabbed him like 100 times, and then I got back at those 100 guys that I was, you know, forced to sleep with. And we see a montage of all the dead bodies that's chasing her are actually the Johns that she had slept with, and she eventually killed them and like hid their bodies in the different floor panels within the building. And that was one of my criticisms at first while I was watching it, because I'm like, well, how the fuck would no one? If there's 100 bodies hidden in this building, how would no one smell it? But then I thought about it. Excuse me. And she did say early on when Ellie's about to move in, I hope you like garlic, because that's that French bistro that, you know, smells up the neighborhood with that smell, and you'll become blind to the garlic smell. But then also she said, in the summertime, you're gonna have to clog up the drains because the smells of this the sewage or whatever, will start to rise. She was talking about the bodies, the smell of the body. So, you know, Edgar Wright, he does plan this shit out. So I give him that. That was good. So Miss Collins is like, well, I'm gonna have to get rid of your ass too. You're really nice, but you're bringing all this unwanted attention to my spot. And she's like, oh my God, you're gonna kill me? And she's like, yeah, but I'm not gonna do too crazy, because she gave her some tea and she put something in the tea that's gonna make her fall asleep. And then she's like, I don't also have to necessarily worry about an explanation, because, you know, the police already think you're crazy. So, you know, and you got that craziness in your history. You know, I think she said she knew about it or assumed. So she was like, yeah, it'll be easy to cover your shit up. So, but then John was there, and she told John, like, hey, if I'm in there for 15 minutes, come and check on me. So once John comes in, he's looking around, and she stabs the old lady. She stabs John. I think she dropped a cigarette, or Ellie knocked one of the cigarettes, but that falls into like the box with the records. So that's starting a fire, and then that's when like the old lady is like chasing Ellie, because Ellie's trying to get away from her. The fire going. John is in the floor bleeding, essentially bleeding to death, or about to bleed to death. And that's when the scene is like it's changing from like old lady to Anya Taylor-Joy, and everything's kind of when it's Anya Taylor-Joy, everything's like red, like it's like these glass stairs, and she's like slashing at her and breaking the walls around them and trying to get her. It was really cool visual. And then they're in the top room, and they have a discussion, and she's like, I couldn't deal with it anymore, and I didn't want to deal with any of this. And then like the ghosts are coming at her, and they're grabbing on Ellie, because she's trying to call the landline, I guess, to call the cops or whatever. And the ghosts eventually are like not actually trying to attack her, but they want her to kill Sandy, kill Miss Collins, and, you know, help them out. And then and Ellie's like, I don't really want to help you guys, because you're also assholes. I kind of like that was just like, well, yeah, she did kill you, and you were wrong, but you were also assholes, so I can't necessarily help you guys out like you want me to. I kind of did respected that. It's like, yeah, you got done wrong, but you also like not the best people. Like, I don't give a fuck about you guys. So eventually, when she realizes the cops outside and the fire department's outside, old lady's like, look, I've been doing this a long time. I ain't want to do this shit, and I damn sure ain't about to get locked up and go to jail jail after all this, so she's just like, she slits her throat. She's bleeding out, and then she just sits on the bed surrounded by fire. She's like, get out of here, you gotta get out of here. So she gets out, she saves John, and the place burns down basically. And then it kind of does a quick time jump. Ellie's, got her designs for the fashion show. She's doing good, and the grandma's there. John's still alive. Thankfully, John didn't die. I thought he was done. I thought he was down on that bottom floor, on that first floor, roasted. But thankfully, he wasn't. And they're still together. I guess they're a couple now or whatever. She's doing well, but she sees the ghost of her mom, which she hadn't seen while she was in London. But she also sees the ghost of Sandy, and her and Sandy are cool. Now that Sandy's an actual ghost, she can, I guess, communicate with Sandy, and like her and Sandy, it seems like they're actually cool. Or Sandy, her ghost may have possessed Ellie. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just Ellie and Sandy are just going to be besties in the afterlife now, which, whatever. Maybe we'll get a sequel. I doubt it, because he doesn't really do sequels, so he hasn't done a sequel yet. So, but yeah, solid. Really, really, really good movie. I fucked with it a lot. And like I said, everything that was established made sense. Like I said, it didn't need to be funnier, but, it could have been funnier, I guess. I don't know. I loved it. Really good film. Worth checking out if you want to watch some sort of thrillery, sort of horror-ish type stuff for like the time now, the season. You could do a lot worse than this movie. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Last Night in Soho. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this video, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace.